I also think the whole idea of venture capital, there's a lot of venture capitalists who are still confused that a pure play media company is going to be, $1 billion company. And I think what we're learning now, just like you figured out, hey, look, the conferences, the webcam, like these other revenue sources can be highly profitable for what they are. Now we're going to get into this world where like the media companies figure out other ways to monetize than just like, hey, pay me some advertising and I'll slap a banner ad somewhere or whatever. And what I haven't seen yet that I think BuzzFeed maybe tried to do this is I'm shocked no one's built a media company and then went and built products and then used their distribution to pipe the products through.
Yeah.
I think BuzzFeed tried it, but I don't know how successful it was.
I'll tell you one thing. Ultimately, I don't care, right? I mean, I don't think a lot about how to build the next media empire. And I think that's why I was successful. I truly loved like what I did. Like the very first few years, I didn't think about the business. Heather did. I mean, I talked about the business a little bit. That was all my CEO. So I hired a CEO because I'm terrible at managing people. She ran the business. She turned it into what it was. I was just, I mean, I don't want to say I'm the talent. It sounds like I'm boasting, but I was literally just a guy who, I have a very important call coming. I was literally just a guy who wrote content every day. And I loved meeting founders. I loved meeting new or understanding what their new products were. And that's just what I love doing. And I think obviously you love what you're doing, right? I mean, you like talking to people.
So you obviously spent a bunch of time interviewing founders, hundreds, if not thousands of them. How'd that help you when you got to the investing side of the table?
A lot of people owed me favors, right? I mean, for an entrepreneur, that first press is very important. It can help you hire. It's your parents get to see it, your friends get to see it. Like it feels good. It feels more real. And I was often, if not usually, the first person to write about a startup. And so that generates a lot of camaraderie and goodwill. And so that definitely helped when we launched our venture fund, get into some of the early, like really important deals that really helped our first venture fund, like hit it out of the park. And so, it's also just doing goodwill, like doing nice things for people without any kind of transactional hope for a payoff is actually like really works out well in the end, right? You just do what you love, you help people, and you're going to find a way to be successful from that. And if it's not a transactional, like some people are so obviously transactional in the way they deal with people that you know what I mean by that. You just sort of end up being turned off by it all. Just help people like in a way that is fun to do, and it'll all end up working out well.
Yeah, it's funny too because I think Silicon Valley, like literally the physical place, more so than probably anywhere else in the business world, understands that. And I think it's like Naval talks about, playing long-term games,
Yeah.
long-term people, or whatever the quote is. And it just feels like Silicon Valley has known this for decades, and people know that they're going to run into each other again, and so people
Yeah.
generally try to use that to their advantage.
So let's just explore that for a minute because I think it's really important. So I realized once I got into crypto that is not how the whole world works. So in Silicon Valley, we dealt with a lot of New York people, and New York people have their own special way of dealing with people in business, and not necessarily negative. You just had to be abrupt, direct, right? And you have to adjust to that. And New York people adjust to Silicon Valley people. But generally speaking, like people find a way in Silicon Valley to work out their problems without like it getting ugly. I don't know if you know, Benchmark sued Uber a few years ago. That was like a sea change in Silicon Valley. Like you just didn't see that. I mean, you saw it very rarely with egregious examples of malfeasance, but like what Uber did, like it was interesting that Benchmark sued them because that reputational issue is important to them. When I got into crypto, I realized very suddenly that like a lot of players were not in Silicon Valley or New York. They were in Europe and they were in Asia and like completely different like cultures, right? And for anybody who spends a lot of time in Asia, you realize how different the cultures in Asia are. But like when you deal with people from China, Chinese nationals, you have to like worry about things in a certain way. When you deal with people from Singapore who are maybe Chinese, it's totally different. Hong Kong, again, totally different. And Korea, totally different. And so I had to learn very quickly that people do business differently and you have to watch yourself because long-term reputations didn't matter as much, especially in like 18 when we first started getting involved in this in 2017. And it's really a problem in crypto because I think a lot of people have almost like a Napoleon complex. I don't know how to put it, but like crypto was so hot in 2017 and it's become so mundane since then. And people like you and I believe it will become very, very hot again. But in the meantime, I think people with these very large egos aren't making any money and they act in a certain way that's just been disappointing to me. So
Yeah,
yeah,
and I think also you see this in finance, right, et cetera. It's just like it's a very binary game, kind of zero sum. I win, you lose.
yeah.
And I think also venture investing in general, like people who understand how it works, realize it doesn't have to be zero sum, right? Yes, maybe you lose a
No,
deal.
it's not zero sum. It's
Yeah,
not zero sum. Yeah.
yeah, and so I think that like just the asset and the way that the investing is done definitely helps. But on top of that, also, if you think of Silicon Valley, like there is a scarcity of great companies, right? And so everyone is going to, when they see great companies at whatever stack of the process, they're going to
I would not say. I'd say there's a surplus of capital.
Okay,
Um,
yeah, yeah. So either way, it's either surplus of capital or scarcity of companies. But there's a mismatch between the capital available and the number of companies that should probably get that
sure.
capital,
Yeah.
right? And that's probably not necessarily as true in the finance world. Maybe there's individual deals, but there's definitely
Yeah.
a very different mindset, without a doubt.
Well, and the funny thing is, you eventually gravitate to people you like doing business with. So you, for example, by the way, who's our sponsor today? Is it BlockFi? Is it Kingdom
BlockFi is
Trust? Both
Block,
amazing companies. Yeah. Um,
Mike is obviously an expert in all things media and revenue.
but BlockFi, a great company. You're an investor in, and you've been like from the beginning, right?
Pretty
Uh,
early, yeah.
yeah. Your fund has put like a big bet on BlockFi over multiple rounds, and you introduced them to me, and we invested because of you. Um, and it wasn't you, for example, trying to resell your shares to me at triple the price that you bought them, which is a situation I recently came across with some Asian investors with a different company that I won't mention called Deribit. And it was just a wonderful. And I assume you didn't get a kickback from BlockFi as part of that. Which another company we just looked at, it turned out somebody else was getting, the person introduced to us was getting a kickback. Like all that stuff is just very alien and ugly to me. You simply liked the company. You thought I could add value. You thought it would be a good investment for us. You put us together. We made the investment, and we love the company. And as far as I know, you got nothing out of that. I hope, except BlockFi was again even more appreciative to you. And I've never heard a company gush over someone the way they gushed over you when we first talked to them. So,
Well, they're incredibly kind, but I think that your point about it's this weird thing where you're lining up incentives, right? Like I knew that we were super bullish on the company. We were literally
yeah,
making a very big investment. I knew that they were looking specifically for certain types of help that we said, look, we can help in one area, but there's other people who are much better than we are. Let's go get those people. You happen to be one of those people who brought very specific value to what they needed. And when you line that up, I think the point around, you know, one, you get to see a deal you didn't previously see or didn't spend much time on, right? And you like it, so you're going to go do the deal. They look in, they say, hey, look, we've got this great investor being added to our cap table. And for us, it's one of these things where like, if you're not involved in the deal, like I would argue that the deal's upside potential is not as high as it is with you in the deal, right? So like you
well,
almost
thanks.
want
Yeah,
you want people around the table who you know can help because those people
yeah.
will make everyone make more money
And
as the
also
company grows.
not fair weather friends because too many people are fair weather friends, and you see this in crypto as well. Where like when everything's hot, everybody's your best friend, but companies, they really need their investors when times are bad. And if you stick through a company when times are bad, they remember that and they tell other people. And I'm not saying, as far as I know, BlockFi hasn't had a bad time yet. But when they do, you'll be there for them, and I'll be there for them, and they'll remember that. So
Couldn't agree more.